Welcome to Listworthy's recap of the movie Candyman. So, a short while ago, I saw the trailer for the movie Candyman, which will be released in 2021, and when I saw that the talented Jordan Peele was attached to the project, ooh, I was so excited. So, before the release of the movie, I thought I would revisit the original 1992 version. So, here we go. The movie follows Helen Lyle, a semiotics graduate student in Chicago who is researching urban legends. A university student tells Helen the story of a girl named Claire, who was babysitting for the Johnsons, a couple in the neighborhood. Claire had a boy named Billy swing by the house she was babysitting in, intending to get naughty with him. Now, for some reason, this girl Claire thought that talking about the Candyman, a ghost with a sawn-off hand and a hook attached to his bloody stump, who can be summoned by saying his name 5 times to a mirror, would be a great form of foreplay. Predictably, the two dumb teens summon Candyman, and he shows up with his hook and kills the girl and the baby that she was meant to be watching, while the boy Billy reportedly went insane from the supernatural experience. Whilst writing her paper on the Candyman, Helen meets 2 cleaning ladies who claim that it was the Candyman who killed Ruthie Jean, a resident in the notorious Cabrini Green housing project. Helen and her colleague Bernadette Walsh look into the case and learn about another 25 murders that are like Ruthie Jean's. Skeptical about the legend and in a playful mood, Helen and Bernadette repeat the Candyman's name to Helen's bathroom mirror, but nothing happens. Helen and Bernadette decide to write a thesis on how the residents of Cabrini Green used the Candyman legend to cope with their everyday hardships. She and Bernadette enter the housing project and visit the scene of Ruthie Jean's murder. Helen takes lots of pictures of the place and finds a mural of the Candyman. At the bottom of the mural, she finds candy laid out, kind of like how offerings are made at a shrine. Helen and Bernadette then meet Anne-Marie McCoy, the mother of an infant son named Anthony, who tells them more about the night of Anne-Marie's murder. Later, while she is having dinner with her husband at a restaurant, Helen learns more about the Candyman from her husband's friend, Professor Purcell, who had researched the Candyman's origins some years earlier. According to Purcell, the Candyman's father was a former slave who became prosperous by mass-producing shoes after the Civil War. So at an early age, the Candyman was accepted into white society. He grew up to become a well-known artist who was much sought after by wealthy landowners who wanted portraits of themselves and their children. After falling in love with a white woman that he was hired to paint and fathering a child with her, the Candyman was set upon by a lynch mob that was hired by the woman's father. The mob cut off the Candyman's hand with a rusty saw and smeared him with honey stolen from an apiary, attracting the bees which stung him to death. His corpse was burned and his ashes scattered across the land on which Cabrini Green was built. On a return visit to Cabrini Green to see Anne-Marie, Helen is disappointed not to find her home. She instead meets a young boy named Jake, who tells Helen of a child who was castrated by Candyman in a public restroom. Curious, Helen goes to check out the restroom and take pictures. While there, she is attacked by a gang leader who carries a hook and calls himself the Candyman. Helen survives the assault from the gang leader with nothing. Later, in a parking garage, Helen is confronted by the real Candyman. He tells Helen that he wants to make her his victim, that he was obliged to come because she was not satisfied with stories about him. He tells her that because she discredited his legend, he must shed innocent blood to perpetuate it. Helen blacks out and wakes up in Anne-Marie's apartment, covered in blood. Anne-Marie, whose dog was decapitated and baby was stolen, hysterically attacks Helen, thinking she is responsible. Helen tries to defend herself against Anne-Marie, but the police find her in a very incriminating state when they find her covered in blood and holding a knife as she tries to defend herself against Anne-Marie, so they arrest her and interrogate her. Helen's husband, Trevor, a university professor, bails her out of jail. Trevor and Helen hire a lawyer to defend her, and because the blood they found on Helen belongs to the dog, the lawyer thinks that he can be able to keep Helen out of jail. When Trevor is at work and leaves Helen alone in their apartment, the Candyman appears again and cuts Helen's neck, causing her to bleed. Just then, Bernadette shows up to pay Helen a visit. Just before she passes out, Helen tries to shout out and warn Bernadette to run, but she is too weak and Bernadette doesn't hear her. The Candyman kills Bernadette and then frames Helen for the crime. Helen is sedated and placed in a psychiatric hospital. While there, she is tormented by the Candyman, and she screams. When doctors come to sedate her again, they can't see the Candyman, and Helen looks and sounds crazier than ever. A month later, Helen is interviewed by a psychiatrist named Dr. Burke in preparation for her upcoming trial. He shows her video footage to prove that the Candyman was never in her room. So to prove her innocence, she summons the Candyman. The Candyman appears and kills Dr. Burke, then frees Helen of her restraints, allowing her to escape. Once Helen is home, she finds her husband Trevor living with Stacy, one of his students with whom he's been having an affair. Helen is devastated after this discovery, feeling she has nothing left to live for. She flees to Cabrini Green, seeking to confront the Candyman and rescue baby Anthony. When she finds the Candyman, he tells her that surrendering to him will ensure the baby's safety. Offering Helen immortality, the Candyman opens his coat, revealing a rib cage wreathed in bees. The bees pour out of his mouth as he kisses her, sending the bees down her throat. The Candyman vanishes with Anthony, and Helen discovers a mirror of the Candyman and his lover, who bears a striking resemblance to Helen. The mural, as well as a message left by the Candyman, implies that Helen is a reincarnation of the Candyman's former lover. So that may be the reason why, unlike his other victims, he didn't immediately kill Helen, but instead offered her immortality by his side. The Candyman promises to release baby Anthony if Helen helps him strike fear in Cabrini Green's residence. In a bid to feed his legend, the Candyman tries to immolate Helen and the child in a bonfire, but Helen stabs she dies. At Helen's funeral, the only people in attendance are Trevor, his mistress Stacy, Professor Purcell, and a priest. Just as they are about to leave the cemetery, the residents of Cabrini Green in Helen's grave, and it is buried with her. Afterward, a grief-stricken and guilt-ridden Trevor misses his wife and remembers the good times. He calls her name 5 times while looking at his bathroom mirror. Helen's vengeful spirit appears and kills Trevor with a hook, leaving his body to be found by his mistress Stacy. As the credits begin to roll in the Candyman's former lair, a new mural of Helen with her hair ablaze is displayed, implying she has now become part of the local legend. And that, in a nutshell, is what happens in the 1992 movie Candyman. If you like this video, please hit that subscribe button and check out my other content.